With personal loot double confirmed for Battle for Azeroth, I'm going to cover the following topics in this video. 1. Who are the winners and losers? 2. How will different types of raiding guild have to adapt? And 3. Will this affect the way we acquire loot in the next expansion? Personal loot was revealed as the way to go for all sorts of loot distribution at the most recent Q&A that Ian Hazacostas conducted. But there was still some people clinging on to any little hopes. Well, they talked a lot about split raiding. If it's intended to sort of put the cap on split raiding, then couldn't you do something like only allow master loot to be in 1, a guild group, which is already the case in Legion, and 2, only for mythic raids? Because what a lot of mythic raiding guilds do is split run, of course, normal and heroics in that first week. But of course, the mythic raiding is your full progress group. So that would be okay, yeah. Well, no. Personal loot now in packs, it seems to have been double confirmed, as I say, that's the way to go. And the particular developer in question, when they responded to this in Slootbag's interview, was not talking about it from a point of view of split raids as Ian Hazacostas was. He was saying, no, it's not just about that. They just think it's a better model for loot distribution. So, regardless of what individuals may think, that's the way it's going to be in Battle for Azeroth. As I was saying on my stream, I was talking about this a bit last night with a few of you. And the only way that would change is if it was a massive backlash. And there's not really going to be a massive backlash, because at the end of the day, this is something that is only going to negatively affect a small number of people. So, who are the winners and losers in this? Well, there are winners in this. In fact, there's actually quite a lot of winners, really, if you think about it. Because if we think about the people who best used master loot, it's the ones who were absolutely able to min-max their loot distribution for the benefit of their raid team. So that meant people, first of all, doing split runs. Now, although split raiding has increasingly been done by mythic guilds, it's always been the case, well, not always, but, you know, for about a decade or so, has been the case for the very top guilds, because it makes sense to do it. If you're going to spend a lot of time playing the game, you're going to develop a lot of alts, then of course you can do split raiding. In fact, you know, back in Wrath, I believe, I wasn't playing at the time. I'd quit the game then, come back. But I gather, you know, with the limited try bosses, one standard way to do that was to take in one raid team of like your alts to try and learn aspects of the fight, so that eventually once you've done that, you could go in with your proper raid team and actually then kill the boss. And effectively, you were getting more tries per week than you'd normally. Top guilds are always going to find ways to game systems based on the fact that they are so hardcore, that they're playing such a lot, that they can do that. And that's not really going to change to any appreciable level with this. We're talking here about the more amateur but still serious mythic raiding guilds that the last couple of expansions have been increasingly split raiding, because it's straightforward to do. You know, with the normal and heroic modes coming in when they introduced mythic with WoD, it became straightforward to do. Just everyone in the guild, or most people in the guild, have a decently geared out. And then what you do is split into at least 2 raid teams, half alts, half mains, and you get twice as much gear in that first week if you can do that. Bring along a few socials to plug in the gaps as well. Bargain. And that helps you funnel the loot to where it's needed. But that's going to stop. Okay, so the people who were doing the split raiding, of course, are going to lose out of this a little bit. Conversely, those who are winners are the ones who didn't do split raiding, because they were at effectively a disadvantage, because other guilds that were split raiding were getting more gear, and that's helping them push. They're getting their tier bonuses more quickly. Of course, that's a different thing now. Azerite bonuses it'll be. And also, they were just getting straight up more gear, higher item level. So those 0.1% or 1% wipes may not have been 1% wipes anymore. So it just helps them kill that extra boss or two in the first week. The other aspect to it is distribution of loot. So people who were min-maxing their distribution of loot, in other words, a good item drops, particularly if it's Titan Forge or something, the sort of thing you're not likely to see again for a while, if at all. And who's that going to? Is it going to someone who's going to be able to maximize their use of it for the upcoming progress, or not? So some guilds will be better at giving that loot to the people who are going to best use it than others. Then there's other things that sort of come into there as well. So you've also got certain things like the size of the roster to consider. If you've got a very large roster, you're distributing your gear over a wider base, and that means a lot of your good items might be on the bench for certain bits of progress. Or you might end up, gearing someone up and then they leave the guild to join a better guild, something like that. They've been well geared, they're getting loads of great logs, and up they go the ladder. Those sort of things aren't going to happen as much, and largely that is because there'll be less choice in the matter. So the winners will be those mythic guilds especially, who were not split raiding and may not have been able to funnel their best loot into the people who are going to get best use out of it for progress as well. However, the losers are not necessarily going to lose completely, because there are things they can do. Already you may have come across people, for example, in Mythic Plus, who every now and then try to take an all-leather composition or an all-plate composition, because you can easily do that into a Mythic Plus dungeon, which means that, any piece of armor drop, it's no use for the person that gets it. They might be able to trade to someone else, assuming, of course, the item level isn't a barrier to that. That sort of thing you might expect to be increased. So the sort of guilds that would have done split raiding before, but maybe aren't hardcore enough to get any benefit out of it in BFA. Maybe they put their extra efforts into running more focused Mythic Plus dungeon groups, where there's a greater chance of being able to share loot between the different players going into it, organising little teams to maximise the effective use of the gear that drops there. So there's all sorts of systems where you could change the way gearing's done. Now, when we look at heroic guilds, normally heroic guilds, now I don't have any direct experience with these, but I was talking to people on the stream last night and trying to work it out. Well, I'd be surprised if there are heroic guilds that use master loot anyway, but of course there may be. But if you think about it at the moment, if you're going to be giving the gear to the people who can use it best on progress. Now, by definition, any guild that's going to be progressing through heroic, and let's say taking a good couple of months over it at least, by definition they must have players in there that are holding them back a lot. So are you just going to give the choice bits of gear to the very able players in that guild, the ones who are carrying everyone else? That makes the most sense from a progress point of view. But that also means other people are not getting loot at all, or just the cast-offs. Well, how are they going to feel about that? Not very good. They're unlikely to stick around. So you create a situation where you have to distribute it more fairly, and maybe the odd exceptional piece goes to your better players, but by and large you have to sort of have Buggins' turn, where everyone gets a decent amount of loot and a decent amount of time. In which case you're diluting it anyway. Isn't it just better to do personal loot? And then a point that one of my viewers brought up, which is an excellent point, is that if you load up all your best gear anyway onto your best players, well, all you're doing is gearing them up to go to another guild, to join a mythic guild, say, or something like that. So you're losing all your best loot in one fell swoop if that happens. So I would think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think a heroic guild would be very pleased at the notion that this would be coming in and that there's no choice in the matter. Now, that issue of choice there, of course, won't necessarily apply to mythic guilds. I do think that mythic guilds are going to have to consider very carefully their loot system, because it'd be easy to think, well, it's personal loot, we have no control over it, and especially in the first week of a new tier coming out, it'll be too high item level to trade, nothing we can do about it, it's just personal loot, no master looter, we'll just do the bosses and go into trash, do the bosses to go into trash. And it just drops how it drops, and we just hope for the best. The danger there is going to come a point at which it's tradable. So, over the coming weeks, you'll get a situation where some loot becomes tradable. Now, there's different types of player in any raid group. It doesn't matter how high up they are, how low down. So, let's say you get a piece dropped for you. And it's a bit of a side grade. Maybe it's the sort of thing you'll use now and then. You're not going to use it a lot, or you're not going to use it on every boss. But for someone else, it's a massive upgrade and they're going to use it on every single boss. Well, in a traditional master loot situation, it would go to the other person. But it's dropped for you. So here's the situation. Let's say the other person's going, oh, come on, it's a really big upgrade for me. You know, are you going to use it much? You're going, well, it's not a you know, I'm going to use it on these fights, and when I am, it's like a 1% upgrade. You know, it's not, you know, a make or break. And for them, it's a more significant one and one they're using all the time. So you give it to them. But then let's say the situation's reversed. Let's say they're a bit of a loot whore, for example, and the situation reversed. They get an item that they're not going to use it very often, but it's a big upgrade for you. But then they go, yeah, no, I know, but I'm going to use it on this boss, and that boss is a really tough boss, and blah, blah, blah. And they come up with any excuse to hold on to anything they might use now and then. So because you won't have people of the same sort of mind, you could end up in a situation where someone's feeling, well, hang on a minute, I've given away what might have been an upgrade on some fights, albeit a small one, but I'm not getting ones that would be a big upgrade for me and a small one for someone else. There'll be some disparity there, and therefore the cause of potentially some bad feeling. And this is where guilds are going to have to come up with some rules or systems. Whether it goes into trying to turn personal loot into a pseudo master loot system, in other words, if it can be tradable. And of course, we can always find out if it's tradable. We all know about the add-ons that came at the beginning of Legion that would flag to everyone if it was tradable. So if an officer team keep very careful check on what loot people are getting, so they can't just hide it. Because people have done that in the past, I've been told, where you can get add-ons, looting add-ons, where it will show the master looter what you're wearing, and some people, I'm told, I've never experienced this directly, but I've been told there would be people who, just before they sort of say need or whatever on an item, will quickly swap in a crap piece of gear to make it look like it's a bigger upgrade for them than it really is. But, you know, let's say you get the add-on flags it up. So the officers can see, in theory, you can trade this. Then they start to come, okay, all the items that can be traded, someone's bound to create an add-on for this, by the way. It comes into a window, and the officers go, okay. So have a general rule of not equipping anything, not equipping any gear until the officers said it's okay to do so. And then they start to work out on that basis. Even that could create some little bad feeling, especially if there's a way to game it and fool the add-on into thinking that you can't trade it when actually you can, or something like that. I'm not sure how easily an add-on would be able to definitely tell that. It may be that it's straightforward and you can't fool it at all. That situation would be a lot messier as well. It will take longer to distribute loot than it does already. And again, you know, if it's a really good piece, you can sort of imagine someone going, oh no, I've equipped it by accident. I'm so sorry. So sorry. So there's all that to deal with as well. But it is one of those things where I think, you know, in terms of loot distribution for Battle for Azeroth, in terms of acquiring loot for Battle for Azeroth, there are going to be some things to think about. Those are just a few of them. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share for further details. If you want to discuss this live, check out my stream schedule. In fact, I'm going live in an hour or so as well for today's Azeroth review. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.